Recording. Now, good evening, everyone. It's lovely to see you all. And it's the first one of February. So we've got January out of the way. And now it's on to, hopefully, getting a bit brighter. Days are getting longer. And everything's getting a little bit nicer outside.
This is the first episode of the fourth month. We're actually 4 months old now. So we're kind of pretty pleased considering that when we started, we had no idea what we were doing. And we have a bit more of an idea of what we're doing now. So let's crack on, really. So what have we got? What have we got lined up for tonight, mate?
Well, this evening we've got another step in Dad's morning routine. We've got a bit about Darwin's Finches as well. And we've also got Saxon Hedgerow. We've got Star Constellations Part 2. And we've also got a bit about the bird watch, if anyone else did it at the weekend. So, Dad, if you'd like to take us away.
Take us away. So this evening's observations to get things started. Have you ever thought that we can actually learn a lot just by looking at nature? Have you ever thought there are times when that wind blows like a hoolie, like it's going out of fashion? When rain comes down in torrential downpours and it absolutely floods. We've had a bit of that just lately. Or the sun comes through and it's burning so hot. All of those things are temporary. None of them ever last forever. Everything is in a complete state of flux. Everything that composes also decomposes. Yeah, that's quite a concept. We tend to think of composing generally being music and then decomposing, breaking apart, but that's the way that it all works. And it's one of those things that we can take a real message from, because all of those storms that we have in our life, all of those things that are challenging, in exactly the same way as all those natural elements that we have, will always blow through. They'll always come to an end, because if you think about it, nothing is strong enough in this world, to keep things going for a long time. You know, we don't manage to live for a long time. Storms will always come to an end. You know, there's a lovely line in the film The Crow: it can't rain all the time. And if we just remember those patterns of nature, and we can apply them to ourselves as well, because sometimes we get buffeted almost by the wind. Sometimes we seem to be absorbing everything. But if we can let ourselves be flexible and go with it, those things also will pass. Now, I'd like you to just try and think about one or two of those things of nature, and just think about how they might reflect one or two of your characteristics, how you might see yourself. Just think about how the tide in the sea goes up and down the beach without judgment. Because that's quite a massive thought, really.
Yeah, we've just had a couple of things come back in the chat. One from one of our members, and she has said, I did some balancing this week. Poor to begin with, but was improving after a few attempts. Now, for those of you, this is your first time, we've been going through week by week a little section of Dad's morning routine. Now, a couple of weeks ago, we had a section on flexibility and balance. Now, I managed to do it very poorly, and Dad also managed to do it very well. And it's great to see that you guys are joining in and getting involved with doing those exercises too.
It is indeed. So we move on. I mean, the reason that I put this routine together, and some of it was just because I wanted to do something to set the day up, and some of it were things that came along almost by accident. I mean, the exercise routine came out of uh, meditation. It came to me and I worked it through and it became what it is. And one of the things I do is I've got a couple of books that I read sections from every day. And I'm going to talk about one of those this evening. See, my sister gave me a book for my birthday last year. It's called Everyday Nature. and it's got an entry in it for every single day. It's written by a bloke called Andy Beer, and it's really good because there are some wonderful little snippets in there. There are some wonderful things that you always knew, but you'd forgotten you ever knew. And sometimes there are some things you go, that's amazing. And it's really, really obvious. So what I'm going to do this morning, it might be a morning routine, but it's not the morning, is I'm going to read you the entry for today, the 4th of February, because it's kind of topical and it kind of works for us. It's called Scrub. One of my favourite nature sightings was the report of a nightingale in the bushes at Reading services on the M4 motorway. We may not have heard it sing, but it was a reminder to us all about the neglected value of scrub. Scrub is what you find on waste ground, in the field margins, the railway line or tip. It's an in-between thing. It doesn't fit into the neat boxes that we like to apply. It's not neat and straight enough for a hedge, and certainly not statuesque enough to be called a woodland. If you don't fit in, then you don't get overlooked. You don't have to take the same view. If you can find a patch of scrub on a February day, it's a great place to be within the protection you may find the first spring the first spring leaves or a sheltering bird. The nightingale was singing us a lesson about the errors of tidiness. Far from being commonplace and unimportant, it turns out that in between spaces, grassened with thorns, edges and fringes, are some of the most important of all. And I rather like that. But so tomorrow it's got a section on celandine, and on Saturday, magpie. And that's great. Magpies are some of my favourite birds because they're bold. There's a lot of magpies around me. I know that I need to stand up and be bold. So it's full of these little gems, and it has got an entry for every single day. And it's lovely because when you start off with those thoughts, it's just something that you carry with you. And when you look and you see a bit of scrub, I think about the nightingale. And it's funny how things are so topical because we were only watching a program, a film 2 days ago, and the nightingale was quite a prominent bird in that as well. It's funny how these things tend to kind of all drop in together.
Yeah. Well, there's another step in the morning routine. So now, moving swiftly onwards, it's time for a bit of Darwin's Finches. So,
okay, it's funny, we were going to do a section on all the different kinds of tits that we get in our gardens and our homes and our houses, and we're still going to do that. But I thought, well, it would be quite interesting to actually stop and think about Darwin's finches because they kind of explain a lot of the ways that we've actually evolved in our world. They actually, Darwin, I'm sure you've heard of Darwin, a natural selection fella, and he went on the voyage of the Beagle, a boat called the Beagle, big boat ship, in 1831. It was a voyage that was meant to last for 2 years, and they were actually gone for 5. Now, when he came back, he had many reports of many different animals, findings, sightings. He had a lot of samples that he brought back with him. And he actually made a presentation to the Natural History Museum on I think it was the 7th of January in 1837. And one of the things he talked about were the finches. Now, there are 18 types or 18 species of finches in the Galapagos islands. And we're just going to have a look at a couple because, if you like, we're talking about what's called adaptive radiation. And he was pretty sure that back in the early days, there was only actually one kind of finch on the Galapagos Islands. But because there was just the one finch and there were all these different places to live and all these different kinds of food that were available, and the finches kind of split up and went into different places, And as they one went to live in the trees, and one stayed on the ground, and they then started feeding on different things. And we're going to have a look now at some of the finches that are on the Galapagos, and we can show you a little bit more as to exactly what Darwin had seen, and what he reckoned was what was going on. So let's start off with this large tree finch, Camarynchus psittacula. Now, if you like, the idea is that this is the Ford Escort of finches. You know, it's the bulk standard basic model, and quite possibly was the original finch that was there. And you can see it's quite a chunky bird, and it's got a kind of medium-sized beak for a finch. Now, this finch eats insects, but it also eats fruits and seeds. So we'll see how that radiation went. If we can have the next slide, please.
Just like to point out as well, the image on the right is actually Darwin's own discovery, which is still in the Natural History Museum.
Indeed. So the small ones are the ones he actually brought back with him. So if we look at this one, Geospiza magnirostris, the large ground finch, which stays on the ground, hence the name. But if you look at the size of that beak, it's huge. And it's huge because it's designed specifically for crunching large seeds. So therefore, it wouldn't do quite as well if it was finding its food up in the trees, because with that dirty great beak, it wouldn't be able to catch the insects in the same way. Next, please. At the other end of the spectrum, you've got a bird that's more delicate, a little less chunky, with a much, much smaller bill, smaller beak. And that's because it's looking to get into small crevices and small places that insects hide when it's up in a tree to catch insects. You know, it's utilized a completely different niche within the habitats that are available. And next. So this is Camarynchus parvulus, the small tree finch. Again, it's very similar to our last example, but it's got a bigger, stronger beak. But this one is still an insect-eating species. So, Geospiza scandans, common cactus finch. And this one eats cactus, pollen, and nectar. And as you can see, although that beak still looks somewhat ferocious, it's nowhere near the strength of those big seed crunchers that we saw earlier, because we're kind of half and halfway species of finch.
Yeah.
Okay, Geospiza fuliginosa is, again, another one. It's a seed eater, so the beak is bigger and crunchier. Small ground finch. So it's body size as well. Yeah, it's amazing how often we really do show some imagination in the way that we actually name our birds, in the fact that it's a finch, it likes to be on the ground, and it's small ground finch. It's amazing how often names of birds are actually related to its size and its habitat. Okay, and that is the end of this little introduction into the way that birds go. So if you think about it, you start off with a kind of Ford Escort of birds with a kind of middle-sized beak of a bird that can eat various different things. And then you've got these radiating or adaptive radiations into slightly new species that change. And it has that effect due to eating pressures on the shape of the beak and the size of the bird. And that's all dependent on where it lives and the evolutionary pressures or ecological pressures that it's surviving in.
Questions come back. Is the goldfinch in the same family?
Yes. I mean, I have to admit, I'm not an expert on all the different finch families, but yes, they're all finches, but they probably would struggle to live in the Galapagos because we are considerably cooler than the Galapagos Islands. So temperature may also take a part.
Wow. There was Darwin's finches, everyone. Now, the next section.
We've missed one out.
We have missed one
We
out.
have missed one. We've missed one
We've
out.
missed one out.
The modern,
God,
the wonders of modern technology.
You think we'd be planned for all these things, wouldn't you?
Do you know what? We have got a plan. It just has to change slightly, and we had to make a change, and we forgot that we made the change.
Waffling.
We are. Crack on.
Right. So, what Finch are we missing?
Not a Finch. It's a Dawn story.
That's right. I was getting to there. You interrupted me. I was getting there, everyone. Don't listen to him. Listen to me.
See, observations, morning routine, Dawn story. Makes sense, really.
So, we finished Darwin's Finches. And we actually went out the other morning and we went off to the local estate near us.
Betshanger.
Betshanger. Now, at Betshanger Estate, we filmed a video on Saxon Hedgerow. But whilst we were there, because the only real time we could go this week was at dawn. So if any of the members know, it's time for a dawn story. So, without further ado,
let's crack on.
Good morning. It's about 7 o'clock. It's February the 2nd, which is in bulk, and it's pretty much halfway between winter solstice, the longest night, and the spring equinox, where day and night are of equal length. We are on the Betshanger Estate, and we're about half a mile away from Chelmsford. You probably can hear the Dover Sandwich racetrack, which is extremely busy. And with the wind as it is, it's blowing the sound straight at us. Well, that's kind of interesting too, because we know the wind's blowing this way because we can hear the road much closer than it is. We can't actually feel any wind at all, which is actually really cool. We can hear it blowing in the trees above us, and we can see the trees above us blowing like silly. We can hear the dawn chorus, which is really, really cool. But it's kind of one of those modern life, country life paradoxes, and sometimes you can't have one without having the other. I guess it's a kind of balance, really.
we do apologise for. We are still learning, and we think we're getting there, but it does take a little while because we treated ourselves to a new microphone, so we're just learning the ins and outs of how everything works. But a couple of questions just come back quickly, touching back on the finches. So, do all Galapagos finches have flight? Finches on Heron Island, the Barrier Reef, don't fly anymore as they don't have any predators.
As far as I know, I submit I know that the finches that are regularly used to talk about the radiation, but we'll check, we'll find out, and or if anybody wants to have a look and put it in the chat while we're on air, that'd be great. We can get it in the group chat tomorrow for the members, but if anybody can find out and put it in the chat for tonight, that'd be really cool. Thank you.
Yeah. We went to Betshanger Estate to go and film a video on Saxon hedges. Now I'll hand over to Dad in the video to tell you about the Saxon hedge, and then we'll tell you a little bit more after.
Absolutely. Otherwise, we'll do what we normally do. We'll tell you everything before the video that we're going to tell you in the video, and it's a bit like a school lesson. So here we go.
Oh, you might remember when we did guided walk 2 or 3 weeks ago, we talked about a Saxon hedge on the Betshanger Estate. Well, that hedge is behind me, or the hedgerow is behind me. And in a minute, we're going to go and see how many plants, shrubs, perennials that we can actually identify, because this has been judged to be a Saxon hedgerow by the number of plants that are there findable all year round. Now, it's not going to be terribly easy this time of year because obviously there's no leaves or fruits or berries or anything to help us identify them. But we've been working on trunks and bark types, so we're going to see what we can find. But there's a couple of other points that are really interesting too. You see, we've just walked across this large field which is a monoculture. It's for a rape, which is grown for the oil, and that'll be harvested later in the year. That's the stuff that makes the fields go yellow. But as we walked across there, apart from the fact that we saw 5 buzzards, and as we also mentioned previously, buzzards are fantastic in themselves. Having come to this hedgerow, what is really obvious is the amount of life that is in this hedgerow. There's not a lot of food or shelter in the early stages of rape, but even so, when it is full grown, there's not a lot of cover or food of any type. But now we've come to the hedgerow, and the first thing you notice is birdsong. And whilst we've been stood here, I've heard song thrushes, I've heard blackbirds, I've heard robins. There's the titting of great tits and blue tits, straight off. You might be able to hear the song thrush now. It's the one that's repeating. There you go. Conveniently, it's actually started singing, just when I needed it to. So, we're going to go and see what we can find, and we'll catch up with you in a moment. Blackthorn. You can tell it's blackthorn because of the colour of the wood. It's got spines, the one that gives us sloes in the autumn. Elder. That wonderful tree that gives us elder flowers in the spring, elder berries in the autumn. They're kind of really dark, almost black in colour. But the bark is kind of unique. It's kind of ridged, green, mossy feel to it. Depending on your point of view, it's either a real pain because it grows quite quick, or it's an absolute godsend. But then, do you make wine or drink it? Do you remember as a child throwing up the helicopters of sycamore and ash trees? Well, these leftover helicopters from last year tell us that this is an ash tree. Cherry. You can tell it's cherry by these horizontal strips along across the bark. It kind of peels in a kind of unique way. Cherry. Hazel. Easy to recognise this time of year because of the catkins. It's a small shrub-like tree that has those big kind of round leaves in the spring and summer. And this magnificent example looks an awful lot like an oak tree. This one is a plum tree. Which is also slowly helping to decompose the woods. And if you might remember from last week, fungi forms part of the wood wide web, which actually helps the trees to communicate. It's all part of that kind of cycle. So the tree falls, it rots, other things grow, it goes, some nutrients back into the ground, and that further feeds the hedgerow and brings it back to life, which is pretty awesome, really. So we're slightly off topic now, but why not? This is big red stem moss. We've got a fallen piece of tree and it's taken it over completely. Kind of indicator that it's quite damp here quite a lot. But it's part of that cycle of regeneration. So I thought you'd like to have a look. So working on the philosophy of the number of identifiable species in that hedge gives you an idea of its age. We haven't proved that this hedge is a sex hedge. We've seen elder, blackthorn, oak, red oak, hazel. As the main protagonist, that's 500–600 years old. That puts it back to the Middle Ages, which is quite cool anyway. But there's also an awful lot of what we've got here. Brambles, which are overgrowing, covering the ground, which again makes it great for wildlife, full of blackberries in the autumn. It just gives you some idea of the variety you can find with a little bit of knowledge on what's eventually turned out to be a dry, winter's morning. Thank you.
Now, as you can see in the background of that, we did have one of our co-presenters with us. Four-legged friend. Now, he's currently not with us. He's decided he wanted to vacate the room. So we've got our other co-presenter, but he's currently asleep. So they kind of pick and choose when they want to come in. They're not great colleagues. They kind of just choose as and when. We've got a couple of things come back in the chat from the video. 2 comments saying gorgeous bird song and beautiful bird song.
As we mentioned, it was the song thrush. Now, song thrush is one of the few birds that is really, really easy to identify when you're out. They have literally just started really singing. Now, all you need to know is that the song thrush repeats everything it sings 2, 3, 4, maybe even 5 times. And that singular fact means you can identify it. They're a kind of large brown bird with a very wide, kind of open speckled chest, about the size of a blackbird. But they really are a real kind of indicator that the world is starting to turn. You know, is one of the things that we were talking about again last week with Imbolc, having been this week, that amazing festival that I talked about in the dawn. But they are amazing. And if one of the reasons we get up so early is actually go out and listen to the thrushes amongst other birds.
Yeah. It is truly amazing this time of year, because you kind of, I always find when you get to the end of summer, you think, I've had enough of the hot weather. I like to cool down a little bit, jumper weather, put a fire on, cozy indoors, that kind of appreciation when it gets warm in the house. And then it gets to this time of year and you start getting excited because you start seeing buds on the trees, the birdsong changes, and then you think, oh my God, I haven't got to leave the house in 14 million layers. I'll get to leave the house in maybe 1 coat rather than 3. And then I get to leave the house in a t-shirt and shorts. And that's when I think it gets quite exciting, especially when it was last year was March and April. And you go sit outside quite comfortably in a t-shirt and shorts and get tan in March and April in lockdown. That was good fun. I enjoyed that.
It was. Going back to the hedgerow, and I did mention it in the video, but just to make it really clear, is the understanding is that anything in a hedgerow that is a perennial plant that grows and stays there year after year after year, if you count all of those species, that will give you an approximate age of the hedgerow. So if you've got, as we said there, 6 or 7 things that we could find and count, that makes it 600 or 700 years old. The Saxon, they've obviously, and again, I used to help out on the estate of Betteshanger, and one of the gentlemen that worked there had an amazing knowledge of the area and the history and the natural history. And he was really proud of the fact that hedgerow was a Saxon hedgerow. Now, if we go back and think about it, the Saxons came along as the Romans were disappearing. So we're talking sort of like 400, 500, 600 AD. That means that hedgerow has to have probably 14, 15, 16 different species of kind of shrubs and trees in there. But it's quite phenomenal when you think of a hedge, that's something that is not a brick built structure. It's not absolutely solid by its very nature. It's moving, it's changing, its composition is changing. The plants and things that are living there are changing. And it's been that way for nearly 14, 15, 1600 years. It's almost kind of mind-boggling. I mean, when you think that the average oak tree will do 300, 400, 500 years, might make 1,000 years, that's kind of, it's mind-blowing. But there you go, those trees are big and solid. A hedgerow isn't. So just, it's one of those. Just think about it. When you go out and you see a hedgerow, not only is it something that supports life and provides, you know, channels and routes, it's almost kind of like a wildlife motorway in between the fields, because nothing can, you know, it's very hard for wildlife to exist in a monoculture where all there is wheat or oats or rape which are quite common these days. So you move in, it's full of life, which is fantastic, but it could have been that way for a really, really long time. And it just helps to put us in place, put us into perspective. Anyway.
A couple more things in the chat. Actually feels like I'm there with you in real time. Well, that's what we hope to come out of these videos. We show you these videos. I mean, we've had in the past for our members, they know that we have guided walks where we go out and we'll do a walk and they get to use it and go out and actually do the walk themselves. So it's not almost like you haven't got to be there in real time because you can do it yourself. But we also have other features like nature reclaims. We haven't got a nature reclaim tonight. Well, we had one in the last members show, guest show, which was in Kingsdown, and we talked a little bit about the history of the place and a little bit more about sort of why it's there and how we've left it alone because we have no more use for it, and nature's taken it back.
Mind you, next week's walk is going to be a bit entertaining. We had some. I'm not going to give anything away because that would be very, very bad. But we had some entertainment today that was a bit unexpected, and we're going to be broadcasting that for our members next week because let's just say that
we're both a little bit battered and bruised.
We are, and my socks weren't good at the end.
But you'll find out more about that next week. And a couple more things as well. I love trees. Who doesn't love trees? Without trees, we wouldn't be here.
You see, there's nothing like a good hug of a tree, I always feel. Very important.
Also, brilliant. So informative.
Oh,
well, that's what we hope to be giving you.
That's it. We hope you learn a little bit from these shows.
And everyone's saying the bird song was awesome. You can't beat the bird song. You really cannot beat the bird song. Now, quickly going back to trees, for our members that were here last week, they remember that we had our special guest, Jane Dunsby, on. And she actually told us with trees actually have a heartbeat. Now, I didn't know that till last week. But unlike ours, where it beats a certain amount, it does a certain BPM, theirs works on a completely different level. But it's just so interesting because you never think of having a tree with a heartbeat.
No, because they actually pump the sap up the tree. It's not like osmosis or anything else. They actually pump it. And to pump it, there has to be something working like a pump, which effectively is what a heart is. So if you've got something that's pumping with a regular beat, it's going to have a beat. It's just that we aren't actually able to sense it ourselves. Everything out there's got a heartbeat. Absolutely everything. There's a pulse in our world all the time. Now, we probably ought to crack on a little bit.
Got one more.
Go on then.
One more.
One more.
I've seen a documentary about that, as well as how trees communicate with each other. Fascinating.
Wood Wide Web. We will get further into that on another occasion because there are a lot of connections in the earth. But that's a story for another day because we have to get a little bit astral now. Okay, we need to get a little bit stellar because as well as what's on our world, on our earth, when it's dark, face it, it's dark a lot in the winter. It's a time to get out on a clear night and have a look at the heavens. So Ross is going to tell us a little bit about some of our heavens, things that you can see in the night sky. This is Star Constellations, part 2.
Yeah, so for those of you that were here last time I did one of these, last time I did part 1, which was all about just a few of the most common, well, a few of the most commonly cited star constellations. Now, obviously those being Ursa Major, Ursa Minor, and plenty others, but I won't get into that because we've already covered it. So this week is a little bit different because we're actually going to be talking about star signs. Now, there's a couple of questions you may have about star signs. How old are the star signs? Now, we know that the Babylons, which are a group of people, a collective population of people, they divided the zodiac into 12 signs, and we don't know a specific date, but what we do know is it was around 1500 BC. But there's more questions you might ask about that, like, who are the Babylons? Well, the Babylons are an ancient race of people.
Babylonians.
Babylonians. My mistake.
Sounds like a rugby team.
Babylonians. Now, you may ask, who are the Babylonians? Well, they came from a city of Babylon. Now, in current day, the ruins of Babylon are, if I can get my words out, the ruins of the city of Babylon are located in current day Iraq. But then there's more questions you may have from that first statement. What is a zodiac? Well, a zodiac is actually just an area of the sky. Now, I thought there would be a much more to it than that, but it's just an area of the sky. It stretches 8 degrees north and 8 degrees south from the apparent path of the sun. Now, that's also known as an ecliptic. Now, you might be wondering, what does that look like? Well, what I've put together is, what are the zodiac signs? I do apologise. I didn't even realise I've written that one. Now, the zodiac signs themselves are Aquarius, Pisces, Aries, Taurus, Gemini, Cancer, Leo, Virgo, Libra, Scorpio, Sagittarius, and Capricorn.
Did you do that in one breath?
Two breaths. Now, this is just to give you an idea of the ecliptic and what the zodiac is. So, what it shows is the ecliptic is the outer circle, and the Earth's orbit is the inner circle. And from that, it is then divided up into each section of our year. And each star sign is allocated at a certain time, correlating to a date within our year. Now, each star sign itself also has a picture that goes with it, or almost a logo. Now, Aquarius has its own logo of almost a piece of pottery with water in it. Pisces has a toothfish. Aries has the ram. Taurus has the bull. Gemini has almost a shadow, you could say, of a person. Cancer has the crab. Leo has the lion. Virgo has the lady. Libra has the balance.
That's
Scorpio
me.
is obviously a scorpion. Sagittarius is bow and arrow. And Capricorn is a Capricorn. So, now, if I bring everyone back, I've seen the chat going off in the corner of my eyes, so I'll start reading that in a minute. But that is just the first part. That's my little introduction section about what the star signs are. Now, each week I'm going to be doing a couple of the star signs, probably the next 3 or 4 weeks, and we're just going to go through and look at what those star signs are, the time of year where they come in, and what that means. What kind of stereotypes go with this star sign? What have we almost been allocated with? Now, I will just read the chat because I've seen a lot going on. So, Capricorns are the elite. Defo. Apparently, I'll agree. I'm not ever going to be the bias to any of them because then I would be a terrible presenter. But I'm a Capricorn as well myself. So, I'm not mentioning any more. But that is just the introduction to the star signs and star constellations part 2. So,
Personally, I think Libra is pretty awesome. People who are well balanced.
well, that just shows why I'm terrible at doing the balancing exercises.
I hadn't made that clear. Yeah, obviously.
But we'll touch more on that in a couple of weeks when we get there.
Indeed. Talking of well balanced, have we still got that video with the push bike and the pull?
Oh, I'm sure I can find it quickly.
So we had a little video and we weren't sure whether we were going to have time to slot it in. So Ross is going to quickly have a look. But years ago, when I used to work on the Betshanger estate, there was a pool at, well, let's play the video and a little bit of countryside humour, this one.
Now, years ago, when this was still a shooting estate, we used to walk through here, and a gentleman who I presume lives on site had actually arranged a push bike, taking the front wheel off it so that it looked like it had crashed. He then had arranged an old toilet yes, an old toilet, and into that toilet he'd put in 2 pairs of upturned wellies. Now you can imagine the scene when we came through one day and the whole of that pool was iced over. Looked brilliant. There is a photograph of it somewhere. I'm going to see if we can find it. But if not, just let your imagination run wild, because it was amazing when you came around that corner, as you can imagine.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, just adjusting the technology.
We're still getting there.
It's
We're still getting there.
It's a very high-tech method, isn't it? You see, because when we're showing the videos, we're using our, if you like, our camera, and because we've got the microphone, it doesn't pick up the sound. So we have to disconnect the microphone so you get the sound for the video, and then reconnect it to get back together again really quick so that you can hear us when we're talking. It's one of the miracles of modern science.
Well, apparently, we're still doing a great job. So I think we can both take that on board.
Excellent. So we've been talking about the birdwatch, the RSPB's Big Garden Birdwatch, which they run in the last weekend of January each year. And it's an amazing chance for, if you like, the whole, primarily the UK, to actually get involved in some kind of semi-scientific science, because it just gives an idea of bird numbers right the way across the country. And it also gives an idea of which birds are coming into our gardens. It's also a really good excuse to sit down and do nothing apart from watch birds for a whole hour. So we've got our results, and we're just going to, as Ross had said earlier, it's amazing. Normally we've got loads of sparrows, especially, and we were
talking of sparrows. For those that were here when we did it, and I believe it was the Christmas special, we actually did a count of sparrows video, and that was when we had loads, and they didn't want to come out for the bird watch.
Exactly. So working with animals and cameras anyway. So most of the birds, they stop for our hour, but these are the results that we've got. And if anybody wants to put their results in the chat, that would be fantastic. So what did we see, Ross?
So we saw 1 blue tit. We saw 1 great tit. We saw 2 collared doves, 1 robin, and then we saw 10 sparrows.
Oh, I think the other 20 had gone on holiday for a day. So
we've had one of our members come back, and she said, I had no birds in my garden for an hour I was watching. In fact, very few for the whole 3 days of the watch.
3 days.
3 days, and there was nothing. It's quite sad, isn't it?
It is very sad.
It's quite sad.
It is.
Well, we've done it every year. And I mean, when we first started doing it, that was actually working for the RSPB. And we'd sit in the front room, and all we had at the time is just a bird table in the front garden. And we hadn't actually started to expand the back garden yet, and done all the work that we've done now to make it more homely for birds. And I must have only been anywhere between the ages of 8 and 10. And we used to sit there for an hour, and we would sit there for an hour, and we usually would see 1 singular sparrow. And that would be about it for an hour. Whereas normally we're out there with cameras, or Dad will be sat in his office with the blinds up, and he'll be trying to get his phone every 5 minutes to try and take videos and pictures of things. And for some reason, they went dead for that hour. No one appeared. No one turned up. Now, we've got a couple of things come back. I live next to a wood, and usually I have lots of birds. It was very strange. Yeah, I'm quite perplexed at that as well, because I remember you putting a video. I think it was a thrush in your garden, just eating away at the feeder. I have pigeons and robins who visit most days. We do like robins. We saw a couple of them today. We had 1 robin where we were doing a couple of treacherous things. Well, I'm not going to tell you too much. And this robin came along, and he just sat on a branch right by my ear. It's pretty cool. They are brave little fellas, are the robin fellas and lasses.
Fellaresses.
Well, maybe. The birds may be making the most of the quiet skies and enjoying the flying time. That's true. I mean, I have seen on the forecast, we are predicted to get some snow. Apparently, 10 days. I'm not sure if we'll get 10 days, but I would quite like 10 days of snow. It would be great fun. Get my sled out. I'd enjoy that. But We
So-
do need to move on. We are running out of time.
We are indeed. So it's funny, we love putting these programs together. It's an awful lot of fun, and it's funny actually presenting the shows can be an awfully hugely rewarding and relaxing, dare I say, even a healing experience. We've had a couple of days where we've sat down and it's like, I've got to do the show. But we come in, we sit down, we get everything together, and it's pretty amazing. But it takes an awful lot of time and it takes an awful lot of effort. And the first thing we have to say is to all our members, we thank you so much. We appreciate every contribution that you make. And as those who've been with us for a while will know, we are stepping forwards with our technology and the quality of our production week by week. And that's down to you, totally. So those of you that have come to visit today, we really appreciate you coming as well. But we are going to ask you if you would seriously consider becoming members. So what is a membership of the Simple Life Circle? It gives you 4 broadcasts most months, and every now and then 5. I believe that April this year will have 5 Thursdays in it. So that's going to be some serious value. You also get to be a member of our closed Facebook group, which has other videos and contributions that we don't always get to put in the show.
You also get all the videos we play in the show in HD. They get posted the day after into the group for everyone to re-watch. If there were bits they missed, we upload them in high quality so you can see them properly, because we know Zoom does have its ups and downs sometimes.
We're going to be putting together a series of outtakes in there shortly, which will be quite fun. And you also get 15% off of all the things that we sell. We sell bird boxes, bat boxes, hedgehog boxes, bird tables. And when the world goes back to some vague semblance of normality and the government lets us, we'll be doing outdoor experiences. We do the 5 senses outdoor experience, has been a really, really popular one. And there will be 15% off all of those as well. So we think that's a pretty powerful package. Now, normally our membership is £19 per calendar month. And for that, you will get one of the 3 books that go with it, either the 3-year pond or the 4 keys or the 5 senses. And we'll get those across to you as soon as possible. But what we're also prepared to do, if you sign up today, sales pitch, we'll send you all 3 books and I'll sign them as well. Ross has been putting the link in the chat from time to time. So that's an extra. If you are able to sign up today, we'd appreciate it. We have some big plans for this show, but we need your help and support to do that. And the more of you are, the better the shows will get. We hope they're pretty good anyway, but...
And 2 of those shows you get per month. The second week of every month is always a guided walk. So we'll go out and we'll go to one of our local places for now, whilst we're still in lockdown and pandemic is still floating around everywhere. And we'll go out and we'll record a guide. So you can take it out yourself. And it's just a selection of videos where we tell you exactly the route to take and exactly where to go. We also put together a map which gets put in the Facebook group, so you can use that yourself and also look at where you are corresponding to the videos. And the last show, the 4th week of every month, we have a show with guest speakers. So far, we've had Lucy come on and talk to us about hedgehogs, because she has spent pretty much all of her life rescuing and looking after hedgehogs. We had Jane Dunsby come last week, who is a mindfulness coach and also knows a lot about trees. A lot about trees.
So she does forest therapies as well.
And then we've also managed to just book in this week. I've been coordinating and having meetings every day, trying to sort everything out for you lovely guys. And I've managed to get, at the end of March, we have a gentleman called Trevor. he is coming along, and he is from the Fox Project. So at the end of March, I think it's March 25th, he's going to talk to everyone about foxes and cubs and why we see foxes in our area and a lot more information, but I won't tell you too much now. And we also have at the end of this month, which I'm really excited for, is we have a gentleman called Dan. Now he's coming along from the Marine Life Rescue Centre. They rescue all the animals that are in our seas, whether that be seals, whether that be fish, seagulls, anything that is marine based, they rescue. And I'm really happy to say that we're having these amazing people come along and talk to us about what they know. But that is only accessible if you are a member.
So yeah, we're doing our level best to make membership something that's, if you like, got huge value, because yeah, we want to make it as cheap as we possibly can, but that means we need as many of you. So anyway,
Well, if you would like to become a member and you do have any questions about membership, anything you would like answered, just put it into the chat and we will answer them to the best of our abilities. We've got a couple of minutes left, so we'll just give you a few minutes to go through and just think if there's anything you want to ask us. And we'll just give you a few minutes if there's anything.
So as we come towards the end, I'd like you to, we were talking about cycles in nature at the beginning. We were about how there are, we get wind and we get rain, and the fact that nothing can ever last forever. Storms always blow through. There is nothing on this planet that has enough energy to keep that kind of force moving forever. I'm saying, just think about, and it would be great if you could put some ideas in the chat, but things about you see in nature that you think might be a bit, have an element of you in them. Do you wake up early in the morning and, like a songbird, go out and make a lot of noise and be bustling and full of life? Are you like that tide that we talked about, rising up and falling back down the beach? Are you somebody who's quite slow burn, who, like a tree, likes to grow and develop slowly? Or maybe like a palm tree that soaks up all that pressure and blows with the pressure that comes with it? Because there's so much out there that we can learn from. Now, what I'd just like to do to finish off, because ultimately there is a massive sense of place out there. There is a massive sense of time out there. There is a massive sense of perspective. And as I said, everything that composes decomposes. I want to read a little poem to you. It's about, oh, I've still got my reading glasses on.
You didn't change to your sexy specs.
No, I didn't go back to the sexy ones. Dash.
That wasn't me telling him that. That was my stepmom, just to clarify.
So, to wrap up with tonight, this is by T.S. Eliot. Because I know that time is always time, and place is always and only place, and what is actual only for the time and only for one place, I rejoice that things are as they are. I'm going to read that one again, I think, because I know that time is always time, and place is always and only place, and what is actual only for one time and only for one place. I rejoice that things are the way they are. Thank you very much indeed.
Now, just a little challenge for everyone from today's show before we wrap up. we've spoke about a Saxon hedgerow. Now, can you get to a hedgerow near you, and can you just identify how many different species you've got in that hedgerow? And then can you work out how old that is? Bear in mind, each species roughly means it's another plus another 100 years. Now, that is a challenge for everyone. Now, we've loved presenting this, and it's time for us to say goodbye. So thank you all for coming along. It's been a pleasure. And we'll see all of our lovely members next week. Good evening. Thank you, everyone.
Cool. Good night.
Great show, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, that was
Amazing.
fascinating.
Imagine if she just sat there.
Well, thank you. That was really lovely.
Thank you, Simon.
Interesting about the bird song. I had great trouble recognising birds by this song.
Yeah, thank you, guys. That was really, really great.
No, thank you.
Bye.